Thank you for listening to Room 9, my daddy's podcast. Hope you enjoy. You can listen to Room 9 on your favorite podcast listening platform. Don't forget to visit our Instagram and Facebook page. Please like it. Room 9. If you better yourself, you better the world.
It was a series of testing myself and challenging myself, and it built up this level of confidence in the unknown where I could just like look at a situation. It's like, all right, here's what could happen, here's what's most likely going to happen. Either way, I'm going to be fine. And if I'm not, it's going to be something that's totally out of my control, right? So it's like, I think that was that's the biggest piece of the puzzle, is that like I was just willing to like put myself in situations that are crazy to most people, to 99% of the population. And through that, I know like even if things went south today and I lost my job and everything were just crazy, I know I'd figure it out.
And that, my friends, was Mr. Ben Burns. And I had an effing blast talking with this dude. Ben is the Chief Operating Officer of The Futur, and he's the Digital Creative Director at Blind. And if you guys don't know what The Futur is, put it on YouTube, Futur minus the E, Futur, and check out what they have going on. They are not only teaching people design and business and helping entrepreneurs, they are constantly helping people gain confidence in their skills and just being able to teach people to learn from their mistakes. It's just an awesome group of people. Ben is an awesome dude. We talked about police reform. We talked about just jumping into fear, and it was just awesome. And I hope to continue to have conversations with this dude in the future. But look out for a solo episode coming out. Is going to share all the changes that are happening and what's going on in my life, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Other than that, folks, as always, I think that's like my key signature phrase. As always, I love you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your ears and your time. I know there's a million other people you could be listening to, so I'm grateful. All right, guys. Peace.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on, Ben?
How goes it?
Very well, sir. How are you?
Good. Here, let me start.
Oh, I got the Twitch camera, the Twitch view.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of a gloomy day, so let me adjust my.
I know. I gotta find. I haven't played around with it yet, but I just started using my other camera with a third-party app, so I can use it on Zoom and shit. And have trouble with the audio always. I don't know what is going on, so I got to figure that out.
Oh man, yeah. I have slaved over this setup for the past couple of months, so it's just a lot of work. Like even if you have all the right gear, it seems that there's. Do I have a delay right now? Like, do I have a?
No, it looks good now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for some reason it works perfectly in Zoom, and then as soon as I go into OBS or Twitch or anything like that,
You get a delay.
you get a delay. It's
Yep.
really weird. It's really, really weird. So
Yeah, I that's what I was trying to do it with OBS too, and I couldn't get the timing right with the
Man.
audio. And then I tried to then I ended up downloading like Ecamm, which just
Mm.
creates a simple virtual camera for you, and then you can play it out that way. But then I couldn't hear anybody I was doing Zoom calls with. They could hear me. I couldn't hear any
Yeah.
sound in. I'm like, what the hell? So I gotta
Yeah.
dedicate some time, set it aside to figure that out.
The interesting thing is that I use a A10 Mini for my switcher,
Mm-hmm.
and this thing is amazing. But it restricts 2 programs from using the same feed at once.
Oh my god.
So when I have Zoom calls, I literally have this little like webcam thing,
Okay.
and I put it literally right, like you can see the reflection on that.
Mm-hmm.
I put it right under where the camera goes so that you can barely see it, like right there. And that's how I've been doing interviews on Zoom is just using 2 separate cameras, and it's gnarly. Like Streamlabs OBS has this digital webcam where it outputs the feed as a webcam that Zoom can pick up, but it doesn't come with sound. So then,
Of course.
it's like this crazy lag issue with the between the two. So,
Yeah, and that's almost more annoying than crappy sound.
mhm. Okay, so give me the gist about the podcast. Like, what are we talking about?
Whatever, man. I'm all about conversations my whole life. Well, since my mid-20s, I should say, not my whole life. I've had to like teach myself how to do small talk again because I got so tired of it. But I just realized, I finally just gave up with the podcast. Like, I'm just recording my conversations. I started it. Technically, I was still in rehab when I started it. The first 2 episodes, I was out on pass, and my roommate and me recorded the first 2 episodes. So it's always been around kind of personal development, mental health, addiction.
Mhm.
But creativity has always been my what the heck was I gonna say? Oh yeah, when I was 15, my brother and sister died, and I would say before that I was never a creative person.
Oh man.
And then after they died, that's when I fell in love with music. That's when eventually I find my love for design and video production and storytelling and all of that has kind of stemmed from all of that, those trials. But yeah, it's just really record of my conversations, man. And I felt like I've been kind of in this 2021 hitting the creative world up. I talked with Fabian, talked with Gary Vaynerchuk, talked with Melinda, and a couple local brand strategists, and still doing some mental health stuff as well. But I was like, I'm gonna reach out to Ben and see if he wants to have a conversation.
Well, heck yeah.
So cool. But I mean, because I always feel like you can still get vibes and energy from people over online, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to have a conversation with Ben. So especially after, I don't know, I think you wrote a couple blogs I seen on your website from like 2017. But you're a pretty good writer, man. I don't know if you've had to work at writing, because for me to be a halfway decent writer, I had to like work my ass off at it. But I like enjoyed your blogs. I was like, man, I'm assuming you probably don't have the time to keep writing them, but
I actually have like a big record of past posts that I've made, and they just haven't seen the light of day. Like I kind of get stopped at the graphics part, but I've got like a whole bunch of stuff in Notion that just has never come out. So yeah. When I launch the new version of my site, though, that's one of my priorities, because I find that I express myself a lot easier with blog. I guess I should record this. Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you,
Thank you.
Whatever you want, though. Yeah, but I enjoyed. I just read them this morning with my coffee. I was kind of going through them, and I feel like I'm shocked at like your history. So you were a cop, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what city was that?
So it was in Savannah, but
Okay.
the later years. So I was only like in uniform for maybe a year in total, and that was even divided up because I shipped off to basic training for the Army National Guard for about 6 months. So didn't spend a lot of time, on the street in uniform. Because when I got back from training, I hit the streets hard. Like I was really gung ho about some of the like drug trade and the violence that stemmed from the drug trade. Like I've first year on the job, I had 2 people die in front of me. That were victims of gun violence from the drug trade, and so I was really passionate about like finding guns and drugs on the street, getting them off. So when I hit it hard, I got noticed pretty quickly. Got picked up by a special operations unit, so we were kind of like tasked to go be really, really proactive in specific areas and do some crazy stuff, like ride around in unmarked vans and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually got promoted into a narcotics position. So I was a narcotics agent for the bulk of my career, and that's a whole world of stories right there.
What drove you to like get into being into the police force? Was it something you kind of always felt like?
It's weird. I've told the story a couple of different ways, and in truth, it was just a whole combination of things. So it was like, number one, I was a graphic designer at that point. I was working for an agency. I had worked up from being a design intern to a senior designer, and I was going to the same office, sitting in the same desk, working for the same clients, resizing the same logos, and it was just kind of getting to the point where I was just like, I don't know, is this it? Is this the career here? Is this all there is? And I feel like I had stopped growing at that agency, but also there's a big part of me that was curious if I could do this. Like I've always tried to push myself. I've always tried to like I've always been a like self-improver kind of guy. I've always tried to test my limits and stuff like that. And so, I was seeing TV shows, and, the glamorous world of law enforcement was like, super, super big. It still is. Like, you can't turn on the TV without seeing a cop show.
I can't believe some of the shows that are still on. I'm like, what the hell?
And the funny thing is from like somebody who's been in the industry and seen all that kind of stuff, like half that stuff is totally just not true. Like,
shocker.
I looked at it, I was like, man, Jack Bauer gets to run around and make his own decisions, and like there was freedom and flexibility and all this
license
kind of stuff.
to kill.
And, it doesn't work like that. It totally doesn't work like that. Like, you have meetings every day, and you have people to report to, and you got laws that you have to live by, and you got rules that you have to live by, and all this kind of stuff. So that was kind of one of those things where for my entire life I hadn't really fit into a box, and I've always been creative, but not like I've never considered myself an artist. So I've like had feet in both of these worlds, and I'm a big dude. So the football coach was always after me. Like, everybody wanted me to play sports, and I never was interested in it. And so when I saw this opportunity to like be a tactical person, it was more like, can I do this? Because, previously I just kind of ignored it. But I was wondering if I was ignoring the physical side of who I was because like I would be unable to do this versus just not interested. And it turned out, kind of prove myself. So there's a really long answer to that one question. It's like, there's a lot of stuff going on. Also, like 2008 hit, like, I started looking around in 2007, and there just wasn't any jobs. So even if I wanted to grow,
that was around the housing crash, right?
Yeah, it was this huge economic collapse. So there was no jobs. So like, even if I wanted to just get a different job to kind of move myself along in my career, there was nothing out there. I had a couple freelance clients, but those were really frustrating engagements at that early stage in my career. And I just, I find myself like kind of stuck, and then wondering about this other thing. And so that's kind of why I made the jump.
Yeah, so it was so intriguing when I first heard that. I was like, man, that's such an interesting. I didn't realize you were a designer. Then you kind of went into law enforcement. Then you came back to the design world. Yeah, I love that whole idea, because I'm the person who is on the other side of the realm as far as like with the cops and all that. And not that obviously I know all cops are assholes is such a blanket generic statement, but because I know some good ones, but mainly my experience with them has always been very frustrating, and to say the least. And I know there's obviously huge tension there, so I was very intrigued, because you tend to find more creatives are more liberal, are more, I feel like that's not a very common combination. Yeah, I was kicking down doors, and then now I'm a designer.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like for anybody that experiences police officers from the point of view of being pulled over or being arrested, or even just like, with a cop on the street, like directing traffic, or sitting and eating an ice cream cone in uniform or whatever, cops can be assholes for sure. I'll totally say it. And love my brothers and sisters in blue, but sometimes they gotta lighten up. But I think that like there's this psychology that's ground into these people that wear a badge, that it's this us versus them, survival of the fittest, this mentality that starts to seep into your psyche. Like I said, I've never fit into a box. And so when I wasn't a cop, I was like the designer that also liked to like go hiking, and I was an Eagle Scout and all this kind of stuff. And then when I was a cop, I was like the cop that was also creative. And so I never really fit in with either crowd, but I recognized this psychology, this mindset of just being hyper aware and hyper cautious of every single thing. And after a while, that like buries itself into your mindset. Everything becomes a threat. And so if you can imagine like walking up to a random person and just trying to figure out if they're going to kill you, like that is the mentality that many police officers carry with them, even on the off hours. And so like it's not an excuse, but no wonder they're douchebags. Like it's just one of those things. And I have thoughts on police reform and stuff like that I'm still kind of formulating and writing and stuff like that. But I do think that like there should be some understanding on both sides, and not to say that cops need pity, but I do think that like we got to figure out like what's wrong with police
Absolutely.
ecosystem that creates this environment and this psychology.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you gather those thoughts, you ever want to talk them out, we could always have a conversation around that, because I totally agree. I think both sides need to give some flexibility. Again, feel like we need more training, like social workers and mental health
Absolutely.
counselors, and like there's some calls cops shouldn't even be called to.
Yeah.
And then there you have that factor. Every time you pull somebody over, you got to worry about, is this person could possibly, you have to at least have it in your mind, or else it could happen one day. This person could possibly fight, and then you're always on edge. So that's a conversation we could continue having.
Yeah. I like there's a couple of pieces of parts, and we'll get on with the rest of the talk after this, but like there's a couple of pieces and parts that I am comfortable, and I do think that they need more training. I also think that like the income level of a police officer leads to low quality applicants. And so if you can imagine, somebody graduating from high school, they've been a football player, their college prospects aren't there, their grades are not there. And one of their options is to join the military or become a police officer. And so there they are at 18 years old.
Yeah.
With a gun and badge on the street. And then you go into this psychology that's shaped, by the environment that policing is. And so you have this impressionable 18-year-old person put in life or death situations with the people who are living in their community. And we expect them to be mature and to make the right decisions at every single moment. And to me, that's crazy. That's totally insane. And so, yeah, I totally think that they need more training. I think that, like, if I'm being honest, like policing in America should be less about like the proactive nature and more about investigatory. So like you see all these shows on TV where you've got these DEA agents or FBI agents running around and arresting people. Turns out they don't do that. They don't do that at all. And that's why they like to work with local guys, because we can arrest based on probable cause. And they are required to investigate a crime, go get a warrant, and then they go to arrest people, only with a warrant that's signed by, and a judge. And so that's drafted by an attorney and signed by a judge. And so they don't have to make those snap decisions that local police officers do. And that's why you see like the majority of the problems that we see in the headlines are from local cops.
Please. Yep.
Right? Because they're, these kids that are not trained and they're on the street. They're asked to make those snap decisions for themselves. And what are they going to fall back on? It's the animal brain, so that's, yeah, we don't have to go crazy down that rabbit hole.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole nonetheless, man. It is. Like even the whole judicial system in general, the whole crime and punishment, everything, that just war on drugs, it's insane to me. But I know. I love your in one of your blogs you talked really about how you use fear, and I think I actually had it: fear inspired preparation, preparation inspired confidence. And that was like one thing that really stuck out to me, because really, really quick, a little backstory for me. In jail is when I really learned to, like, all right, I'm going to learn to love myself. I'm going to learn to cut myself some slack. I'm going to learn to realize I do deserve forgiveness for my mistakes. And I'm just going to keep trying and learn from my failure over and over again. No matter how many times I fail, I'm just going to keep doing it. Yeah. And so getting out was finally when I could apply these things these introspective insights, for lack of a better term, that I was gathering throughout my mid-20s. Now I can actually work on them, because I'm not just building this pile of things that I suck at. I'm actually loving myself, and it's okay to move forward. But part of my process was really anything fearful, anything that gives me anxiety, I'm just rushing into. I'm just going to do it, because that's the only way. If I stop and think about something, I'm done. I will just sit there in complacency and not make any decisions. So I really loved how you talked about preparation, and I feel like that's a better term for it. Because you have fear, it's something else, you find it, and then as you're moving forward, everything you're doing is helping you prepare. And I like that a lot. I think that was really cool. But I wonder how you came to that mindset, or what happened in your life, if you can even, remember or recall, that made you just like, I'm just going to run into fear.
It's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like from the moment I left the design world for the first time and then joined the police department, that's when I started confronting a lot of fears. Because honestly, the whole thing was a challenge for me. Like, I had never been physical, never. Like, I was never the guy that was out jogging in the morning. I was never the guy that was like training for a sport. I sang in high school and in the chorus, and I took photos. Like, that was my jam when I was a kid. And through college, it was the same thing. I was more into creativity than a physical, and so I was really scared about training. Because I'd never like I'd finished a mile, but it was like the time was probably terrible. And so, when I went into training, the physical aspect really scared me. And so I think it started there. And I became through this whole process, even into basic training with the Army National Guard, it was a series of testing myself and challenging myself. And it built up this level of confidence in the unknown where I could just like look at a situation. It's like, all right, here's what could happen. Here's what's most likely going to happen. Either way, I'm going to be fine. And if if I'm not, it's going to be something that's totally out of my control. Right. So it's like, I think that was that's the biggest piece of the puzzle, is that like I was just willing to like put myself in situations that are, crazy to most people, to 99% of the population. And through that, I know, like, even if things went south today and I lost my job and everything were just crazy, I know I'd figure it out. I'm like considering my next tattoo being like figure it out, like getting that tattooed somewhere on my arm, because it's just something that I never want to lose. So I think that like that was the biggest thing that I gained from the tactical era, was like this confidence, knowing that like even if I put myself in crazy situations, I'd always be kind of okay, and I always figure it out. And that's where that mindset kind of comes from. And the other thing is like I had nothing to lose, honestly. I had no reputation. Like I have more to lose now than I did then. But like, just like, hey, sure, I'll do a logo for you. You bevel emboss gradients, no problem. Like it was just one of those things, man. It was just, this is I think that the ego gets in the way of a lot of creatives where they have something to protect, and I think that like that was just a key difference, was like I knew I could figure things out, but I also knew that like I really had nothing to lose.
Well, that's exactly the state of mind I was in getting out of rehab 3 years ago, or 3.5, however long ago it was. Yeah, 3.5 years ago or whatever it was. You know what? I might as well try to start the podcast, start a company. I didn't even know what I was going to do exactly. I knew it was involved around working and helping people share their story or whatever. But I was like, I'm already pretty much homeless. So, what else am I going to lose, right? And just kind of went with it. Feel like that's an awesome thing you're doing. Everybody at the future, and that with creatives. Creatives are the people who change the world, and then conservatives like to come in, not even in a political sense. Conservatives like to come in, order everything up, and push us out of the way. But nothing gets done without creative people. Nothing. And we need, can you imagine if we all had the confidence just to run into it, just to go in, all right, I'm going to keep doing this, and not worrying about, I mean, I've been doing this for 3 years, which isn't a long time, but I still have that ego check every time I go to hit return or enter, and with a social media post, with my design work, with whatever it is, what is somebody going to think? And to just push the effing button is what I tell myself.
Yeah. Well, and like, I still struggle with that too. Like the hesitancy to share has been pervasive in the last, 5-6 years. And when I joined the team at Blind, I was in this like constant, I still carry the learning mindset, but like with this, I was just like, train me, like I am here to learn. And so, every time you get access to, and every time you kind of open the door to a whole nother level of skill, for me, at least, it always kind of feels like, oh man, the imposter syndrome rears into life. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy's so good. He's so creative. Where do these ideas come from? There's no way I can compete, that kind of thing. And I constantly have to remind myself, it's not a competition. It's not, I'm not being measured by any stretch. And the biggest thing is to just share. And I started streaming on Twitch and YouTube about 3 weeks ago. And the whole thing is for me to share my entire process with recreating whatever I'm doing, whether I'm working in Webflow or, designing my personal site or, anything like that.
Yeah.
The whole purpose is just to show people that like not everything is a time lapse. Not everybody wakes up in the morning with this divine inspiration and then they're gifted with the great design and all this kind of stuff. It's literally like, for me at least, it's like just juggernauting through obstacles, like trying not to get knocked down by the brick wall that you're trying to smash through. And so, I'm trying to encourage more people to share that part of the creative process, because I think that holds a lot of people back. They hit that first wall and they're like, man, what do I do? And then they bail. And I think that like the world would be a way better place if more people just kind of push through.
Abso-friggin-lutely, man. I mean, I've had so many creative ideas up until 3 years ago that I've started and stopped. And stopped, and stopped. Nope, it got hard. It got difficult. Forget it.
Yep.
I've actually scoped out some of your Twitch stuff in the background while I'm working. So nice. That's why, like, your keyboard. That's why I said when you got on, I had the keyboard view. I was like, oh, the Twitch view. What really made me fall in love with design too, also, is kind of that balance of creativity and precision and science. I think that is something that and you get to those problems, and sometimes it doesn't have to be necessarily a creative problem solving technique. You could just move this over here. Perfect.
Yeah.
You know? And I love that about design.
I want to hear more about your story, because you've hinted to it. There's jail in the mix. There's recovery.
There's a lot.
Looking for an opening to like congratulate you on sobriety, and like tell me a little bit about that. I know your listener probably have heard it a million times, but like I'd love to be clued in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so I guess, well, I kind of told you my brother and sister died when I was 15, but that was something I felt like even before my addiction that I really came to terms with. It took me about 10, 11, 12 years or so to really, like, I remember the day that I finally, like, sat with it. I think I, like, was just weeping, not maybe nonstop, but really weeping for a few days. And I think it was just that, like, gut-wrenching and just a release. It was just, like, a burden off my shoulders. So I felt like I really kind of came to terms with that. But then I got married, and then I had 2 kids with a woman, and that's when I would say I had my, like, for lack of a better term again, spiritual awakening. I kind of always used a Brene Brown term of nervous breakdown, and I kind of woke up in the middle of this relationship like, this can't be it. Like, this isn't what love is. This isn't what everything is. So I ended up thinking I could handle a divorce, but that weight of failure, really, failing my parents, my sister, obviously my now ex-wife, but wife at the time, my children, failing them. And I think I hurt my back, got prescribed pain pills, and I didn't feel like a failure anymore.
Oh, man.
I was like, oh, wow, this is great. I don't feel like a piece of shit. And it didn't take long after that. I really ended up in jail pretty quickly. I was basically homeless. Girlfriend kicked me out. My parents were pretty much well done with me. My girlfriend's the one who actually ended up calling the cops when I was gone for a few days. I disappeared, and it was a pretty hot mess. But yeah, when I was in jail, it was just kind of a wake-up call for me to, like, either I'm going to keep going down this route and, like, hating myself, or I can, like I said, I can give, all right, why don't I just at least pretend to love myself, pretend like I deserve it, at least start with that. And then, you kind of start realizing from there different things. But I, and started the podcast in rehab technically. And then I came out and then kind of really, I got a grant from New York State Education Department, started kind of getting into video production. And that's when I really kind of fell in love with design, was about around that time.
Wow. That's amazing. And so how long have you been sober?
What is it? 3 years now? Almost 3 years.
Man.
Yeah.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
That's incredible. I have to say some of the most heartbreaking cases that I've had in the narcotics world have been opiates, and most of them soldiers.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. Soldiers and Marines who get injured overseas, they come back and the addiction just haunts them. And, that was, for me, being in the National Guard at that point, it was just heartbreaking. We did everything that we could to put those people into situations where they could make their situations better, versus just shipping them off to jail. But super proud of you, dude. Great job.
Man. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite the journey, to say the least. I think, one of the biggest things I really kind of tell people, usually because I remember when my siblings died, people used to say the most dumb shit to you. like dumb things. I don't even like
Yeah.
looking back, like what grown ass person would say that to a teenager after their brother and sister died. But, you know, I usually just tell people, and it's kind of been a model of my life, like no matter what you're going through, just don't forget to cry, because that's important, especially being men. You know, I talk to dudes jokingly all the time and be like, dude, when's the last time you cried, man? Most people, men, a lot of dudes I know can't even remember.
Yeah. Wow.
And I really have found, you know, crying is a tool. And I feel like just as deep laughter is, I think deep weeping is.
Yeah.
And, you know, amongst while you're crying, like just pick your head up and try to learn something. And that is, you know, I think one of the biggest things, because life is just spent between this universe of order that we know, the knowing, and then the chaos, right? The unknown. And you have to find a balance in between the two, or else your life is off tilt. And in order to get into that unknown, like, you know, that's why I really love that quote: fear inspired preparation, preparation inspired confidence. And the more you do that, you know, the deeper into the unknown you can get, and the bigger the rewards. But it's, you know, it's a challenge. It's not easy. And I think bringing that to the creative world, as we kind of talked about earlier, is such a key thing.
Yeah, man. I'm so stoked for you. Good job, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Yeah. It's been quite the ride. It's cool, man. I mean, that's why, I mean, your journey kind of inspired me too. Just, you know, reading about what you've been through and how you've got to where it takes, you know, a lot of hard work. And I think that's something that is prevalent very much in your attitude and your spirit. Yeah. I'm just digging into Webflow a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know, because, well, I've had people.
Deep well. It's you're about to fall down and become madly in love with a piece of software.
Because I know. Well, because I did my website on Wix. And that is
that's terrible.
It is terrible. But people I've gotten like compliments from people who actually are like, their word means something to me, as far as like, you know, somebody who doesn't play guitar is like, hey, you're great at guitar. It's like, well, you don't really know how to play.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, you know, people have mentioned, you know, about my website and how it looks pretty good. So I was like thinking about diving a little deeper into it, and Webflow is the one that keeps popping up.
Yeah, yeah.
So I hear
Webflow is my tool of choice right now. It's one of those things where it like empowers the designer to actually take action versus be reliant on developers. Now, I know that there's probably some developers in your audience, so I just want to like say to those guys, like, there's always a place for you. There's limitations to every tool. You guys are still valuable. I still respect you. You know, there's so much love that I have for the development community. But making a piece of text bold, or like turning something into 2 columns versus 1 column, like, that's not the problem that developers need to be focused on. Like, the problems that they need to be focused on are much bigger and better and more noble. And I think that, like, with Webflow, it empowers designers to make fairly, you know, really quite interesting websites with an interface that's, you know, familiar to them. And I think that power to make something real, I don't think has ever been gifted to designers before. We've always had to work through somebody else to see our things in the real world. Yeah. You know, like printing press, or a sign painter, or, you know, like a web developer, and having access to actually like do something and then see a direct result without having to learn an entirely new skill. I think we're entering into a whole new world of design where it's not just design, like there's making in the mix. And I think Webflow is like leading the charge on that. Stoked, man. All
right, so I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't dive into it.
Yeah. If you're interested in that web kind of design world, Webflow is the way to go. And the thing about it is that, like, while you're in Webflow, you're using a tool that looks familiar, but you're actually learning principles of web development that are going to carry you through to, you know, being able to have an intelligent conversation with a web developer.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, like, you know, being able to work in the box model, you know, being able to recognize that everything on the web has to fit in a box, whether that's a square or a rectangle, it has to fit in there. And so you have to, you know, figure out how to get the look that you want from this model. Whereas before it was like, you know, a lot of designers had a lack of understanding of why their designs couldn't work. Even as simple as like the difference between margin and padding, you know, like knowing that is going to help you diagnose what's going on with the site, or figure out like how other sites work. And Webflow, like the interface naturally lets you, you know, learn those principles, which is incredible.
Yeah. So it's also teaching you while you're learning how to use it. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so I guess that confirms it. I'll have to dive into it then.
Absolutely.
For sure. I think the more I learn, like doing my website originally, which would have been a few years ago, knowing nothing about design. And then I think I've changed it 7 or 8 times as I have learned along the way over the last few years. And finally, last time I was like, I don't think I can do anything else with this right now. I'm just leaving it. So, but now Webflow comes up. So I'm like, all right, I'll have to dive into this as well.
Yep.
That's right. Ben, what's your time frame? Do you have to get going?
I think I planned for an hour, right? Hold on. I'm going to rely on my calendar. Yeah, I've got about 20 minutes left.
Oh, perfect. All right. Yeah.
I got to prep for my next thing. So, yeah.
Good. Have you guys been working a lot? Or you've been pretty much all at home the last year working there?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So we started going remote about 2 years ago. We were spending 2 or 3 days a week working from home, and then the other 2 or 3 days.
So you guys already kind of were doing that. Office.
Yeah. And the biggest hurdle when COVID hit, all of the video production guys. So like at the Future, we've got a team of, let's say we've got 20 people at that point. We've reduced in size since, but like at that point we had 20 people, maybe half of them or a little bit less than half were all working on the video content team. So these are cinematographers and editors and, directors and all this kind of stuff, producers. And they were all working in the building because we were shooting all the content in the building. Right. And so, they were using our local server and, that's all it was in the building activities. And then when COVID hit, everybody had to work from home. And so the biggest hurdle that we had, everybody else, like the marketing team, the talent, everybody else was really comfortable working from home, no problem. The video guys, they had this thing where they were tied to the physical building. And so we had to adapt for that. And so we kind of looped in Dropbox in creative ways. And now we've got a whole system set up where we're recording from the house. We ship the footage over to them. It gets edited, it gets uploaded, and it's a beautiful system. But when COVID, when the whole pandemic kind of started, that was the biggest hurdle, was to figure out like, okay, we know how to do remote stuff. Now, how do we get the video team on that train? And that took maybe a month to figure out. But so since then we've been 100% remote, and honestly, we're not going back. So we may always have like a physical office space, but I don't think that we'll ever truly be in like a local company, like an in-person company.
Which I think you're going to see that a lot, right? After this past year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost necessary. Yeah, I mean, all my video production has been a pain in the ass for me the last year. Most of my people put everything on hold, especially behavioral health companies, though, because they were so frantic. They're so far behind. I don't know how it is out west with behavioral health companies, but they are just so far behind, man. They don't use social media. They don't create any content. They don't do nothing outside of, as far as what their brand goes. So it's been kind of pull my hair out. So as soon as anything like that, it stopped all my progress of pushing them, because they'll be like, oh, we'll do one podcast a month. Like, it doesn't work. You can't just dip your toe in. Like, nothing's going to change if you just do one podcast. Like, we got to do something else. Let's find out what that is. And I want to scream, because you could be helping people for nothing with your social media websites. It just drives me nuts. But yeah, it's definitely been a rude awakening for some things.
Yeah, it's been interesting, this difference between the West Coast and the East Coast. When I started working at Blind, I was living in Richmond, Virginia, and so I shipped myself and my family over to LA, and
it's quite a ship.
lived. Yeah, it was a huge shift, and I absolutely love LA. I think that like that town, it's just, there's something magical about it. It's filthy. It's like, it's wonderful. It's creative. It's gorgeous. Like, it's just this wonderful mix of stuff. But since we went remote, I actually moved back to the East Coast. So right now I'm living in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, and awesome. So okay.
The difference between the two coasts and, just like business in general is pretty staggering. I can definitely see the difference that you're talking about. It seems like a lot of people over here, and maybe it's just South Carolina, but a lot of people on the East Coast, aside from like the major metropolitan areas, are a few years behind when it comes to like social media and content and, the internet in general, the interwebs,
Yeah, it was crazy. Even like podcasts, nobody in Western New York, I'm in Buffalo, nobody in Western New York had a podcast. Behavioral health company really had a podcast.
Wow.
I mean, there's 3 or 4 now after I started mine, but it was just like shocking to me. Like, how do you, I mean, that's something super simple. Even if it's not good quality, even if you don't even want to edit it, just, get something, start put it out there. So yeah, it's bizarre. But then when you go out west or whatever,
people always say the Easterners are harder workers, which is always interesting.
Interesting.
At least
I don't
in the
know.
restaurant business and stuff. That's the word of mouth I've gotten.
It's possible. It's not something that I've noticed. I've seen like a lot of hardworking people on both sides of the country. I think that like the biggest difference really is the attitude towards community.
Mm.
So like, and maybe this is just me being in Los Angeles, but I've noticed that like people are way more apt to contribute to a community versus
Out west.
the people out on the East Coast.
Yeah.
You know, it seems that, and maybe this is, like I said, my I do not speak for the entire coasts, just the places that I've lived.
Yeah, these are generalizations we're making.
Yeah, which is probably not healthy, but like I've noticed that like the individualistic attitude is far more prevalent in the places that I've lived on the East Coast.
Yeah, I could get that, which I think shows in policies as well.
Mhm.
You know, you see, because New York's very liberal, so we do have a little more, I think, of a communicative sense anyway. But you know, you see that all out west, they're always ahead as far as, you know, laws go that are more to help the people who need help anyway.
But I think it's a little deeper than that. Like it's laws, yes, but it's also things like, you know, with the art scene in Los Angeles, you'll drive around and people will decorate light poles. You know, and it's only for it's not graffiti. It's literally to beautify a block, you know, and to make it prettier for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not street artists. It's just like somebody will go and paint flowers on an electrical box. And it's just like, hey, let's make this more beautiful for each other. And I think that like the attitude in rural areas or places of the country that like are not as large metropolitan areas like Los Angeles or New York City or something like that, this individualistic attitude kind of almost prevents collaboration between creative people. And that collaboration is something that it exists and it thrives in a place like Los Angeles. And that's the biggest thing that I'm noticing around these areas where people are like, how do you get these opportunities? And it's, well, you don't. It's a we. It's like somebody always kind of brings it to your attention and then people collaborate on it and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see the kind of dichotomy between the two places that I've lived and loved in, you know?
Yeah, I lived in Southwest Florida for a few years in Fort Myers after I graduated high school. And, you know, it was, even the culture down there is so different, which I always enjoyed the different scenes and the different cultures and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But even out west, I find, you know, because I've been out to LA once, I think just once, yeah. And for some reason, it was the only time it rained. The whole week I was there, it rained. Only time it ever rained, and like people were saying, "It's the first time it's rained here in 6 years." Like, gee, that's awesome.
Yep.
But what the hell was I going with there? Oh, just the difference in culture. I think it's cool to experience that, and I'm sure you got a big shockwave of it going back and forth from the far east to far west. Pretty much, you were doing coast to coast
and back.
Yeah, and back again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. Do you watch Letterkenny?
No. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's a show on Hulu, and it's about this really small town in Canada.
Okay.
And there's this it's a brilliant show. The writing is incredible on this thing.
I'll have to check out. What's it called?
It's called Letterkenny. It's hysterical. It's not something, it's a kind of a funny that you want to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. Fargo, I guess, is equivalent show. But like they have this whole monologue or this whole series of monologues on this one episode that's talking about the way people say LA. And so every time I say LA, I think of that episode and how people are making fun of people that say LA.
LA.
So I've started to avoid saying LA in favor of California and Los Angeles. Went out to LA.
Oh,
hiking
man.
is great.
I'll have to check that out.
My brother makes fun of me all the time. It's like, man, the food in LA is so much better. It's like, shut up, man.
Is your family in Greenville?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why we moved back.
Okay.
Yep. Have the kids be closer to the fam.
Yeah. And how many kids you got?
2.
Both
girls. Yep. 2 and 5.
2 and 5. Nice. Very nice. Yeah. My son just turned 14, which is hysterical.
My gosh.
Yeah. He is funny, man. But they're in Florida and I'm in New York. So, you know, I usually Skype with him a few times a week. And the one time his voice was just dropped.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, dude, are you sick or did you hit puberty? He's like, hit puberty.
You did not look like you have a 14-year-old.
funny.
Congrats on that. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I had him when I was how old was I? 21 when he was born.
Oh, nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, but yeah, good times, man. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I figured it'd be a chilled, laid back conversation, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful for your time, dude. I would love to stay in touch and keep in touch.
Absolutely.
How do people? Yeah, I don't know what you want to throw out there, whether it's your Twitch, whatever you want to promote. How do people get in touch with you and get a
Oh,
hold
I'm
of you?
everywhere. Yeah, you can hang out with me on any social platform. It's just Mr. Ben Burns. But if you haven't seen The Future, I would definitely look us up. Our YouTube channel is we try to empower people to create lives that they love, through doing the things that they love and making money. So if you're a creative person who wants to start a business or venture down an entrepreneurial path, the content will speak to you. So check us out.
Yes, it will. And I love, before we got 2 more minutes so I can say this, I love, the whole vibe of what you guys got going on over there, because I found like my love for philosophy and psychology, I just kind of learned things backwards. I learned that first, how to be a team player, how to be a leader, how to work on myself. And now I'm learning the business aspect of things. But I love that those two things are converging now in the business world. And it's I give you value, you give me value, we help each other out. We're honest and real. And it's refreshing to be in a business world where that is happening. And you guys are a big part of that for sure at The Future.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
All right, Mr. Burns, I will stay in touch. I will let you know when this is coming out. I will link all your stuff below, and I'm sure I'll be on Twitch, hopefully, the next time you're around. I try to catch you when I'm sitting here doing work. So,
Right on. Well,
all right,
cool.
brother. I appreciate your
All
time,
right.
man.
Thanks a bunch.
All right, peace.
Bye.